What we're told by the office developers was, across all of the ones that we interviewed, that when they sit down with companies that are thinking about relocation or consolidation, they sit down first with the HR team, which is quite different from a real estate perspective, than starting with the real estate people. So that was great to know. On the other side, if you think about the frontier sort of narrowing down on the kind of co-working space, what's really important, and the thing that the product that the frontier offers in the market, is less expensive, cool space. And particularly for emerging companies, their investment should be made in getting their product to market, developing the IP into something that's useful, into a product, in the people that they have to hire. And I think one of the things we learned, and one of the successes of the frontier, is they don't, or they shouldn't be investing in overhead. So the cost of space is probably the least important thing for the success of their company. So they need to focus on the product development, the talent, and if we can provide less expensive space that has amenities that the talent is willing to work there, I think that's an inventory of space that clearly at the frontier, the market has responded very positively to. Because we are an economic development entity, we are able to provide favorable terms that a market rate developer probably couldn't do. So shorter term leases, we're fitting it out in a pretty universal way for the most part, so that if companies don't make it through the entire term of their lease and they have to go away, the space is recyclable to another company. So we want it to be really flexible, generic in a good way, in a positive way, so that companies can have the flexibility to be able to, move their business.
Talk about some of the features and amenities and so forth that people are looking for in co-working spaces.
Yeah, so we're building community. At the frontier, we're not an incubator. We don't provide the add-on services that real early startup companies need, connection to lawyers, people to help them with grant writing. Those aren't the services we provide. What we're doing is providing for the next phase companies who don't need those kind of add-on services, but want to live in a community of like people. And so we have outdoor amenities, we have food trucks on Friday, we have a great program called RTP 180 where folks every third Thursday come in, I make the popcorn and somebody else pours the beer, and there's a series of 4 or 5 TED Talks about a particular topic. And we are bringing the Boxyard RTP online next year, and that's yet another sort of programming venue that builds this community of entrepreneurial companies.
What's the benefit of working in a space like the frontier or any co-working space versus just working at home or that kind of thing?
Well, there's a number of different products at the frontier. So we started off with free co-working space in about 20,000 square feet on the ground floor. And the reason why the foundation did that is we weren't sure if people would come to RTP, if young entrepreneurial kind of people would even come to RTP. So that free co-working space grew into expansion on the upper floors of the first building. There were some old leftover IBM 10 by 10 rooms, and then some of the companies that needed an address and needed a lock on the door, they moved into those spaces. And then as we looked at the remaining buildings on the Frontier campus, we were able to refit those. Some of them are plug and play suites, 1,500 square feet up to maybe 3,500 square feet. And then some were built to suit for 20,000, 10,000, and we actually have a 60,000 square foot tenant that just moved in last month. This was a campus that Research Triangle Foundation owned the land, and it was ground leased to a developer for a long term. And that developer did build-to-suit buildings for IBM. After about 40 years in those buildings, IBM retrenched back to their campus that they owned inside of RTP. Those buildings were vacant, and they sat there vacant. They were marketed, but They were very tired, and there was nothing exceptional about them. And it was really, smaller companies need to touch and feel the space before they're willing to jump in and lease. And so with that, we took back these buildings under the ground lease. We repatriated them to Research Triangle Foundation, and that's sort of how we started the Frontier idea. The organization, we're building the plane while we're flying it. So the foundation tried a lot of different things to find tenants for the building. They thought there would be some big tenants who would want the whole building, but those were few and far between. And so that's when we embarked on this strategy of the free co-working space, of the really small startup space where people can get an address and feel part of a community. Added amenities like the food trucks, beer on Thursdays, happy hour, RTP 180, and some of the, we have Komen does Komen Race for the Cure out of Frontier every year. We're really pleased to be able to support them. And going forward, we're just about fully leased on all the available space left in the Frontier. That's about 550,000 square feet total, and we're very pleased with that. And we are taking on a really cool venture. I call it something that only a foundation can love, because it's not really to make money. It is really to create a sort of cultural center for the companies that are in the Frontier. And in fact, the companies outside of the Frontier are really excited about it. So the Box Yard is a shipping container community. It's about 15,000 square foot total. It'll have somewhere around 20 total companies in it. It's not a food hall. We didn't feel like we had the capacity or the expertise to run a food hall. So they actually are demised premises. So companies can move in, just like the office space in the Frontier and the lab space in the Frontier. It's experimental. Some companies are going to be successful, some companies might not, but we're fitting them out in a way that they can be recycled and repurposed as companies come in and try. And one of the things the Durham County is helping us on infrastructure investment for the whole hub RTP site. One of the things that really sparked them to help them support our project was that we're doing for retail, in terms of experimental startup retail, what we also did for young IT companies, lab companies. So it really provides a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurial experiments. We also are going to have a shed in Box Yard RTP, which is really exciting for us because we've done terrific program out of the Frontier so far, but the shed is going to allow us to really punch above our weight in terms of creating events and activities in RTP. People aren't used to coming to RTP for fun, and this is actually going to give them an opportunity to do that. Some of the things we're focused on now, because we had sold, there are 7,000 acres in RTP, so that's about 1/3 the size of Manhattan. We've pretty much sold most of the land there. So now part of what we're doing is going to companies and finding out what they need to attract talent and retain talent in the region. So there are a lot of places that talent wants to go. We have tremendous creation of talent here. We have the 3 Tier 1 universities, North Carolina Central University, its chancellor has joined our board. It's a HBCU that's about 1.5 miles away from here. We collaborate very much, as do the companies, with Wake Tech and Durham Tech. Wake Tech is, I think they have 70,000 students. And so, the ecosystem of how you get and retain talent is really important. And so we're looking at the 21 miles of trails that run through the park. We want to connect those trails to a regional initiative to connect Raleigh, Durham, and Cary through a greenway and bicycle trail. The Box Yard and the next development, Hub RTP, which is a vertical development of about 1.5 million square feet just next door, which will be connected to the Frontier. That's critical because these companies want their people to come out and feel like there's some great stuff to keep them here after hours. We're going to have the first residential heads in beds that have ever existed in RTP. No one has ever slept here overnight except in a hotel. And we think that there's a market for some significant office development and hotel development within that. There were 300 companies in RTP. 4 years ago, we didn't have any entrepreneurial startup companies. So of the 300 companies that are in RTP, 100 of them are located in the frontier, which is a whole market, a whole ecosystem of business and entrepreneurialism that didn't exist 4 years ago. So we're kind of proud to be able to meet the market with a product that it really needs. An investment is always going to be made in tenant improvements for space in a building. And we're finding that the cycle of companies, they say a lot of times with startup companies, they'll say fail quick and fail often. We're not wishing that on any of our companies, and we're not seeing a lot of people fall out of the frontier. But the investment that gets made in tenant improvements, the more of that investment that can be recycled is of a generic functional quality. It doesn't have to be aesthetically generic, but that it can be repurposed for a follow-up company. There's an expression called long life, loose fit. So if you build something that's a little bit universal, another company can backfill that company. So, worst case scenario, the company dissolves, it's not going to exist anymore. Somebody can step in really quickly, take their space, think that you don't have to make a big investment in tenant improvements for them to be able to move in quickly and function. That's great for the landlord because they don't have to make a huge investment in tenant improvements. It's great for the company because they can be nimble, they can move in quickly, maybe clean the carpet, put some paint on the wall, bring in their own furniture, or use the furniture that got left by the previous company and get up to speed.